they match his pants. Yeah, ethanol. Ethanol is the ruin of America. We're here to denounce ethanol.
Excuse me, we have to go.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us to talk about something that is an incredibly serious issue for our families all across the country, as well as our farmers, our manufacturers, small businesses. Right now, the rising cost of energy threatens really every person and every part of our economic sector. Whether it's gasoline to commute to work, take the children to school, be able to go on a vacation, the diesel to power farm equipment, natural gas to heat our homes, or to produce manufactured goods. We are seeing that more and more this necessity, not a luxury, but this necessity is being squeezed. And I know in my home state of Michigan now, where manufacturing is being squeezed on so many different levels, to add the explosion in the cost of energy to all of the other issues, healthcare costs, illegal trade practices, pension costs that we have to deal with. This is providing a tremendous pressure point for our manufacturers right now, many of them who are really on the edge, and grave concerns about what this means for jobs. Our families and our farmers and our businesses are really getting a 1-2 punch right now. We already know that families are being impacted by what has happened in terms of prices, and this winter, with home heating costs, it is going to be a disaster for too many of our families. Senator Jack Reed said on the floor as we were debating the LIHEAP funding, low income assistance funding, that Americans should not have to choose between the need to eat and the need to heat. And I couldn't agree with him more. In Michigan, post-Katrina gas prices have reached as high as $3.21 a gallon, and we know that there's not the competition in the industry to bring those prices down. Over the last 4 winters, heating oil prices have increased 98%. And this winter, the average American family using natural gas to heat their homes will face a $1,500 natural gas bill, $1,500 and up. And propane will cost the average family $1,427. At the same time, families are being stretched in their budgets to pay for these increases. What do we see from the oil companies? Today, we see another quarter of record profits. Third quarter profits for oil companies are more than $36 billion. And when we look at this chart, just let me talk about Exxon for a moment. Even last year, ExxonMobil had the highest recorded profits of any publicly held company ever. And yet consumer prices went up 23%. Right now, this quarter, ExxonMobil had $9.9 billion, a 75% increase over the same period last year. 75%. The people that I represent have not seen a 75% increase in their wages. The businesses that I represent have not seen a 75% increase in their profits, and certainly my farmers have not seen a 75% increase in farm prices. We're here to say that it's time to hold companies accountable and to do something about this. In the short run, we absolutely need to be focused on LIHEAP, and we are trying to get the funds necessary in order to be able to help our seniors and our low-income families. I'm going to be introducing the Energy Tax Rebate Act as well, which is an immediate $500 tax rebate for families and small businesses in terms of their home heating costs this winter, as well as gasoline costs. And I'm hopeful that we can get that passed. My colleagues and I are here to say enough is enough. We need to be protecting consumers. We need to be providing assistance for low-income seniors and families. And we need to hold those who are setting these prices accountable. In the energy bill that passed this summer, a provision of mine requiring the FTC to do an investigation on price gouging passed. We gave them 90 days to do it. It is not yet done. We need the FTC to use every tool that they have to hold companies accountable on behalf of our citizens. If they believe they need additional tools, fine. We would love to work with them to be able to give them the clout that they need to protect our families and our businesses, because enough is enough. I'd like to now call on my esteemed colleague from Minnesota, Senator Dayton.
Thank you, Senator Stabenow. As the Senator was saying, while most Americans have been suffering from skyrocketing energy prices, a few have prospered at their expense. ExxonMobil, as Senator Stabenow said, reported third quarter profits of almost $10 billion. Royal Dutch Shell, almost $9.5 billion. BP, $6.5 billion. Look at how the combined profits of the oil companies benefit from rising gasoline prices. The more misery they inflict on the American people, the better they do financially. And there are no constraints on their price increases. President Bush said right after Hurricane Katrina that there would be zero tolerance for price gouging at the gasoline pump. So far, there has been zero action about it. I offered anti-price gouging legislation 2 weeks ago that fell on a Republican point of order. Senator Cantwell of Washington is taking the lead now on another approach. We want to protect all Americans from this exorbitant profiteering. It's immoral and it ought to be illegal. We also want to protect low-income Americans who are being ravaged, not just hurt, but ravaged by unaffordable energy costs. 3 times, as Senator Stabenow said, in the past month, we have tried to increase funding for the LIHEAP program to the authorized level of $5.1 billion. This chart shows how badly the LIHEAP funding over the last couple of years has suffered relative to these rising home heating prices. One community action agency in northwestern Minnesota has reported it's already received almost 2,000 applications for assistance this winter. That's 2/3 of the number it received all last winter, which is why several Democratic senators today wrote the heads of the major oil companies, urging them to contribute just 10% of their profits for this year to low-income energy assistance programs. All Americans deserve relief from energy price gouging, the poor and the elderly most of all. Our Democratic caucus has tried to provide that relief. The Republican caucus has predominantly opposed it. We can do better, and America deserves better. Thank you, Senator Stabenow.
Thank you. Just to reiterate Senator Dayton's last comments, America can do better. And that's what we're all about, making sure that together we do get that done. Senator Kennedy.
First of all, I want to thank Debbie Stabenow and Mark Dayton and my colleagues for the leadership they're providing on this issue, and also my friend and neighbor Jack Reed and Libya Snow, as well as New Englanders. This winter, we are facing the perfect storm, And everyone in New England knows what the perfect storm is, and that is low temperatures. They're going to face low temperatures. And they're going to face high and energy costs. And they are going to see the helping hand of LIHEAP will have gone down and down and down over the period of these past years, and down this year as well. That is the perfect storm. That's the perfect storm for Eileen Duggan from Jamaica Plain. Earlier this month, I visited Curtis Hall Community Center in Massachusetts with Mayor Menino, and I heard firsthand about the extreme needs for home energy assistance among senior citizens. And last winter, Eileen Duggan, a 71-year-old from Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts, kept her oven on high and wore lots of layers to supplement heat from her furnace. She also started buying less food so that she could use her small monthly budget pay her heating bill. Fortunately, last April, with the New England chill still in the air, she was forced to ask the utility company to stop sending her oil. I told the oil man not to give me any more. I can't afford it, she said. There's story after story after story. And this is all reflected in this chart here, where we see the explosions of home heating oil over the period from 2000 to 2006, the explosions of home heating oil, the increasing of gas, natural gas, and the fuel oil that has basically gone down in terms of it. And has been pointed out by my colleagues, stated so clearly, the ExxonMobil is reporting third quarter profits a 75% increase over the third quarter of last year. Where is the President of the United States in bringing the oil companies into the White House and telling them to stop gouging the American consumer? Where is the leadership? Where is the Republican leadership in supporting our efforts to try to get the Federal Trade Commission to do a fair and a balanced study so that the American people and policymakers will know who is exploiting who at this time of national urgency? This is a matter of, for those that are facing the heating oil crisis, it's another Katrina. It's another Katrina in terms of the threat to the livelihood of so many of those that are on fixed incomes, elderly, and the disabled. Because if they are not able to heat their homes, their lives are threatened. And certainly some will even be lost because of the failure of this administration to act. We can do better. And I welcome the leadership of Debbie Stabenow and Mark Dayton and my other colleagues here in bringing this measure to the floor again to the Senate of the United States, and we're going to continue. We may lose a particular vote, but we're going to continue on this battle till we are successful.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Schumer.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank my colleagues for being here. You know, this is a question of priorities. Low-income heating assistance gets $2.2 billion for the year, and ExxonMobil gets $10 billion for the quarter. What's wrong with our priorities? ExxonMobil, $10 billion for this quarter. Heating assistance for the elderly, $2 billion for the whole year. Something's wrong in this country. In Katrina, just about everyone was hurt. Not a drop of Katrina fell on my state, and the people are paying the price. High oil prices, high home heating oil prices, high gasoline prices. Only one group benefited from Katrina, the oil companies. And it's about time that they stepped up to the plate. The president called them in yesterday and said, okay, we're going to help you. You need to help us build more refineries. They need to help us immediately. They need to help with these kinds of things like LIHEAP. They need to help defray the costs of Katrina. And the great mistake was made both by, I got to say it, by Democratic and Republican presidents when they let all these companies merge. What a mistake to let the number one and number two companies, Exxon and Mobil, merge, to let Chevron and Texaco merge, to let BP and Amoco merge. The result is we have no competition and they raise prices at will. Ever ask yourself why in California, Oregon, and Washington, which didn't get a drop of Gulf oil, the prices went up the next few days almost as much as the prices in the rest of the country? It's because there's no competition. Ever ask yourself why the oil in the pipeline was 2-3 weeks old, but the price at the gasoline pump went up 2 days after Katrina throughout the country? If real supply and demand were working, it wouldn't happen, but there's no competition. So in the immediate, we need to put a levy on the excess profits of the oil companies and say, you have to share a little bit and help us with our needs. And in the long run, we better look at the structure of the oil industry and bring free market back. And the free market means competition. I've introduced a bill called the Repair Act, recapture excess profits and invest in relief. Not bad, right? And that would create a new temporary levy on oil company excess profits, help us defray the costs of Katrina, and help the taxpayers. We're looking to cut Medicaid to pay for Katrina. Why aren't the oil companies chipping in too?
Thank you. Senator Dorgan.
Oh, America can do better.
Thank you. Senator Dorgan.
Well, Debbie, thank you, and thanks to my colleagues who have a wealth of ideas to address this issue. And I want to say that it was an unusual sight for you and for me yesterday to see the Speaker of the House and his colleagues beating the oil companies over the head with a feather. suggesting to these oil companies that this substantial amount of money they make should be invested in refineries. Good idea. In fact, these same companies are the companies that shut the refineries down. The refineries were shut down because of blockbuster mergers, and following the merger, the new company was shutting down refineries. It's been going on for several decades now. So we see the Speaker of the House and his colleagues get out their feathers and do the equivalent, beating over the head of the oil companies with this feather. Well, look, this is the story. The story is very simple. The story is that there's a barrel full of money for the oil companies these days, and it's growing, and there's a tank full of trouble for the consumers these days, and it's getting worse. I come from a northern state. We are told by the Energy Department that the cost of natural gas will increase 60% in this winter. Is anybody going to do anything about that? Is this administration going to do something about that? A president and a vice president that comes from the oil industry? Are they jawboning? Look, the fact is we have bigger oil companies with more muscle, more raw muscle in the marketplace. We've got, in addition to that, the OPEC countries that sit around a table deciding on supply and price. And then we have the futures markets, which are supposed to provide liquidity and trading that have become grand bazaars of speculation. The result, $60 plus oil and massive riches for the oil companies. And by the way, they are not using them to invest back in the ground or to build refineries. They are drilling for oil on Wall Street. Now, I've got news for them. There isn't any oil on Wall Street. Using those profits to buy back their stock, to hoard cash, and then to try to do mergers and acquisitions by drilling on Wall Street is exactly the wrong approach. One other idea that exists is one that I have introduced with my colleague Senator Dodd, and that's a windfall profits recapture that would send the resources from that windfall profits recapture back to the consumers. That money doesn't belong to the oil companies and doesn't belong to the government. Those are excess windfall profits above the $40 a barrel level, at which they had the highest profits in their history last year. So my hope is that through all of this, perhaps either the White House and the majority in the House and Senate will either see the light or begin finally to feel the heat, and we will see public policy that stands up for the consumers and says to the American people, we're on your side. This country can do a whole lot better than this public policy that allows one side to make a barrel of money and the other side to have nothing but trouble. And the consumers deserve much, much better from their government. And I hope with our pressure, that's exactly what we're going to be able to provide.
Thank you. We'll be happy to take questions. Let me just recap again that we are focused on short-term help and immediate help for our seniors, our families through LIHEAP, the tax credit that I'm introducing to provide immediate assistance, the addressing of the windfall profits that Senator Dorgan is talking about, returning that to consumers, and in the long run we need accountability for what is happening as it relates to energy prices and what it's doing to businesses and farmers and families in America. Questions? Yes.
The industry says, hey, we're making maybe a 10% profit margin. That's not exactly a huge windfall.
Well, all I can say is this quarter, just announced today, and I just, ExxonMobil as one example, had a 75% increase in their profits, 75% increase in their profits. The numbers just don't add up. In fact, when you look at the stories talking about the fact that they're trying not to draw attention to these profits because they're so huge, they know what's going on. They know what's going on, and unfortunately, the American people know what's going on, which is we are paying a huge, huge price on something that's a necessity, not a frill. And it is not we are not seeing the focus on what's best for American people, American families, American businesses, farmers. We can do better than that.
Let me just make, on that point, ask the question, and ask it of any analyst, ask it of anyone with some authority, what are the major integrated oil companies making? What is their profit level? I mean, there's way too much money here for them to hide. And this notion of 6 or 8% profit is absolutely hogwash. Everyone knows it. The major integrated companies, that's what we're talking about. Take a look at the news every single day. They're awash in profits. Last year, we started the year in January last year with an average oil price of $34.50 a barrel. The average price all of last year was $40 a barrel. Hike the price of oil now by another $25 to $30 and ask yourself whether it's reasonable that the major integrated oil companies will come out with an 8% net profit. Not at all. I mean, that's just a ruse. I understand why they say it, but they're making money, more money than anyone in the history of corporate America. And I believe some of that above the $40 a barrel is windfall or excess profits ought to be recaptured and returned to the consumer if it is not being used to invest in finding new energy or building new refineries, and much of it is not.
Absolutely. All you've got to do is look at the lines to see what we're talking about here. That's not 8 to 10%. So, yes.
Marathon Oil announced today that it was going to spend $2.2 billion to double its refinery in Louisiana to 425,000 barrels per day. It's going to take about 5 years, though. Are they doing their part? Should other companies follow suit?
Well, as Senator Dorgan indicated, with the consolidations, and the problem we have right now is we have too few oil companies, not enough competition. In the consolidation, they were closing refineries for years. So I would welcome them opening another refinery, but we find ourselves in this situation because of strategic decisions that they have made to close refineries, cut down on the ability to create and produce what is needed, and instead turning it around and investing in ways that just ups their profits.
Yeah, I'll just say that I welcome a company that decides that it's going to use its profits to build a new refinery. It's exactly what they should do with those profits. And in fact, the Windfall Profits Recapture Act that would provide rebates to consumers would exempt a company if in fact they use those windfall profits to either search for more energy or to build a new refinery. They would be the ones that would decide whether they in fact pay it. But I would say this, the evidence suggests most of these companies are using their enormous profits to buy back their stock, hoard cash, or drill for oil on Wall Street, and that does not help this country's future energy supply.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Earlier in the week, House Speaker Dennis Hastert and the House Republican leadership also spoke on the oil industry. This is about 15 minutes.